Hello everyone, my name is Brian and welcome to my first ever YouTube tutorial. In this tutorial, what we're going to build is basically an app that allows us to navigate to other profiles. We're going to be using SwiftUI and the new navigation stack that is available from the update from the iOS 16 version, and a basic implementation of a model view model architecture. So let's have a look at the app that we're going to build. This is basically the finished app that I built before. We will have a profile screen that is going to be the profile of the current user or the user that is basically logged in. And from this screen, we can go to that user's followers. We can see a list of his followers. And when we click on the user, we basically load the other user's profile. And from this user, we can basically do the same thing where we can basically navigate to another one's profile, another player's profile. And if we click on LeBron James, we basically come back to the first screen. All right. For this tutorial, in my opinion, you don't have to be an expert in SwiftUI. I think the beginner level should be enough. And yeah, I will try and explain as much as I can as while I'm coding, basically. All right, so let's start. I have created like the basic template app. And the first thing that we're going to do is create some folders just to organize our code. The first folder will be the app folder, where we're basically going to put the content view and the app file. So that's done. And then I want a folder for my models, where I'm going to store all my models, everything that's data related. And the second one is going to be the core, which is basically going to be where I write the UI code and where I store all the files. So yeah, the first thing that we're going to do is basically create the user model. I always like to start with my data, so I know exactly how it should look, and so on and so forth. So it's going to be a struct. I'm going to call it user. And yeah, we want our struct to be identifiable because our users are going to have IDs. And just like I said, the first property of our user is going to be an ID. And then we want our user to have a display name, which is also going to be a string. We want our users to have a username, also a string. And then we want our users to have a list of followers, which is basically going to be a list of user. And we're going to initialize it with an empty list of user. We're going to do the same thing for following, basically all the users that they follow. And same thing as before, a list of users. Also going to initialize it with an empty list. After that, just for the sake of simplicity, what I'm going to do is basically have a couple of static variables that we're going to use throughout the app, mostly for our previews, so that we don't have to, I don't know, declare a new user every time we want to see something in our preview. And also later on in our view model, I'm going to use them too. So the first static variable that I want to, static var that I want to declare is basically an empty user. I always like to start with an empty variable, just so again, I know what my data is going to look like. And later on, I will also use it to compare it to other variables, so I can know if a user has been set or not, for example. The second one will be the mark user, In this case, it would be LeBron James. So I'll call the variable mark user, or maybe just user. And I'd rather call it mark user. And all this user is gonna have is basically as an ID. I'll just simulate a LeBron James email, LeBron James at, I don't know, NBA.com, for example. The display name will be LeBron James. I think this is written. That's cool. And then as the username, I will just say King James. And the last static variable that I'm going to have is basically a list of all my users. I will call it all users. And like I said, it's going to be a list of user. And the first user is going to be LeBron James 2 at NBA.com. Display name LeBron James. And username King James. The second user will probably be, I don't know, Anthony Davis. I'm a Lakers fan, if you haven't noticed. So I'll just say his ID will be Anthony Davis at NBA.com. His name, his display name will be Anthony Davis, and the username, I don't know, LeBron or something. Third user is going to be Austin Reeves at NBA.com. Display name is going to be Austin Reeves. Nickname, username, I'll say AR15. And the last user, I would rather have 4. It's going to be D'Angelo Russell. Oops. At NBA.com. Display name will be D'Angelo Russell. And the username is going to be Dilo. So yeah, that's it. Yeah, that data is gone. So now that we kind of know what a data looks like, we're going to build the profile screen. So I'll go right up here in my core, and I'll create a folder, and I'll call it profile. And in this folder profile, I'll create a view that I will call profile view. All right, we'll wait for the preview to load. And yeah, there it is, the empty view. So in this view, what I basically want to have is this right here, everything that's basically here. And we're going to start by building this upper part with basically a header, information, follow count, and a button, and then a filter bar. It's going to be a dummy filter bar, but I just want to build it real quick so I know what it looks like. So, okay, my profile is going to be a VStack. If you're not familiar with the VStack, it's basically just a vertical container for SwiftUI. And in this VStack, I'm going to have a couple of things. In my core, I will have a second folder that's going to be called components. And basically what I'm going to have here is all the views that I'm going to somewhat reuse. The first thing, like I said, is going to be this header part right here. So I'm just going to create a view that's going to be called the header view, for example. And what this header view is going to be is basically an H stack, and similarly to the V stack, is just a container, in this case horizontal, I'm just gonna wait for the preview to load very quick. And good. The first thing that we're gonna have in the header view is going to be an image with the system name of person. Let me look at my code right here on the other screen. So, all right. This image is basically going to have a foreground color of purple. And then it's going to have as the next modifier, we're going to give it a frame with a height. We're going to start with a width, sorry, of 80. Same thing with the height, 80. It's going to have a font with the system size of 35. And then I want it to have an overlay. And for the overlay, I will have basically a rounded rectangle with the corner radius being of 40. So it's going to make a circle basically. And the stroke going to be the color purple. Also with a line width. What am I doing wrong here? I'm definitely doing something wrong here. Just give me a second so I can look at it again. I want to have an overlay, which is going to be the rounded rectangle. And on this overlay, I want to have a stroke. Again, for my stroke, I want to have color, purple, and then line width. Okay, now it's working, of 2. Okay, and that's it. It kind of looks like this one. So that would be the first thing that we're going to create. And then right next to our image, which is basically like a profile image or profile picture, we want to have a VStack. Once again, just a vertical container in which we're going to have as first a text. Our text is basically going to be, for example, LeBron James right here. But since we want to have it, since we want it to be loaded, we're just going to say that our header view is going to have a variable of type user, which is going to be user2. And then that right here, we want to have the users display name. I have to add an argument to my preview. And as argument, I will just say mark user. So my preview recognizes it. And we should be good. Just waiting for it to load. I don't know why it's taking so long. Okay, now we're good. And I want this text to be bold too. Okay, we should be good. And then I'll just add some dummy text. So it just like in the preview that I showed earlier, joined on, I don't know, November 21st, or I'll just say 1st. All right, and I want this text right here to have a foreground color of gray, and that should be it. All right. The next thing I want to do is basically align this so they start right here. And for that, I'm going to give my VStack an alignment of leading. To this VStack, I want to add some padding. Leading padding of 5. That should be good. And then, just so it's on the left side, I'll just give my HStack a spacer. All right. Then I'll have some padding too, just so it's not right at the beginning of the screen. Horizontal padding. Right, we're good. So that's our first component. They look pretty similar. The next thing that we want to have is basically this H tag right here for the info. I'll just call it info view. And it's basically going to be the same thing, an H tag. For this one, I won't take any parameters. I'll just basically say that I want a label. For the title of the label, I want what was this right here? Last played. And for the image, I want the clock, I think. And we should be good. I'm not seeing a clock though. I think I have to have system image right here. Yeah, and we're good. I'll just give it a foreground color of gray. And I'll just basically do the same exact thing for the next line, which is going to be this right here. I'll just give it an icon of a map. Oh, they have to be in a V-stack though, so they're vertically aligned. Sorry. Good. And what I'll say here is basically crypto.com arena for the location. And then on my H tag, I want to add a spacer too, so it's aligned on the left. And I want to add an alignment here to alignment will be leading. We should be good. And lastly, I want to add some padding, some horizontal padding, just so we give it a bit of space. All right. So right now, the first thing I'm going to do is basically go into my profile view and I'll add our first two components. The first one is going to be the header view. And then the second one, it's going to be the info view. Now this header needs a user. I'll just give it the mark user first. All right, it's kind of taking shape. The next thing that we're going to build is this follow container basically right here. And for this one, we're going to create a component too. I'll just call it follow count view. Okay, and what we're going to have is basically an H tag too. No alignment whatsoever. And we want an H tag, and in that H tag, we want to have a V stack with at first a text. That's basically going to be a count. The second thing that we want to have in that V stack is just the text that's right under it, followers, for example. We're going to have the exact same thing for following. And just so it looks a bit better, I'm going to give it a spacer in the beginning, a spacer, I meant on the left, in the middle, and on the right. Yeah, so it looks pretty similar to what we had earlier. But in this case, what we want to do is basically make this variable dynamic. We're going to achieve that by providing the number of followers, which is basically a list of users. And then the same thing for the following. I'm going to add it to our preview. And right here, I'm just going to say, I don't know, all the users. Again, this is just a preview. It doesn't really matter. We just want some data. And here, instead of the 0, I want to say that I'm basically going to give it the count, just so I can have the number of followers and the number of following. Here is going to be following that count. Okay, pretty good. And we're going to add it to our profile view too. How was it called? Follow count view. Again, we're just going to provide some mock data so we can keep on working at first. And again, taking shape. Okay. Then I want to add this little edit button. It's going to be edit button. The next component that we're going to build. And how is it going to look? Just let me have a look at my code. Okay, so it's basically going to be h-stack2. And in that h-stack, we want to have a z-stack. If you're not familiar with the z-stack, it's also a container, but in this case, the components or all the UI components are aligned in the z direction, on the z axis. So what we want to have for our background is basically a rounded rectangle with a corner radius of 24. The style is going to be continuous. Or actually, it's going to be circular. And we want to fill our rectangle with white instead of black. And after that, we're going to have some shadow with a radius of 5. Okay. And what we basically want, and you can see right here on the preview, the rectangle that formed itself, what we basically want to have on that rectangle is text with edit profile. We're going to give our text a foreground color of black, but it's already black, so we actually don't need to. Then the font is going to be sub headline. We want to make our text bold. And the next thing is going to give a text a frame. The width, what I had here was 140. The height, 32. You can make it whatever you want and use it however you want. Okay. Then we want a button style of bordered. And the next thing that we're going to do is add a frame so we can give it a height. So it just doesn't take up the whole screen. And I'm going to give it the exact same frame that I gave to the text. What I want to do is just take right up what's inside of here. And in the preview, we should have our button. Kind of looks a bit thinner. I think we'll give it a height of 48. All right, looks good. So we're going to add it to our profile too. And it's called edit button. The last thing that I want to do real quick is basically this filter bar. But again, it's not relevant for the tutorial, so I'm just going to copy it from my other screen. Or maybe we can just leave it actually. Yeah, we're going to leave it. We don't need it. Okay, and the last part of our screen is going to be this scroll view right here where we're going to have some mock data. So the first thing that we're going to do for the scroll view is first build the row right here. And we're going to build it in our component. Just kind of call it post row. And what would this post row look like? It's basically going to be a Z stack, just like before, with a rounded rectangle, with a corner radius of 15. And the style is going to be continuous. And I want to fill my rectangle with the color white and give it some shadow too. So I'm just going to have shadow with a radius of 5. I'm going to wait for the preview to load real quick. All right, that's good. And on this rectangle, what we want to have, it's an H stack with some spacing. At first, I'm going to give it a spacing of 20. I'm going to delete this right here. This came from the autocomplete. And then we want to have an image with a system name of pencil. Hopefully we'll see it right there. Okay, load it. I'm going to give it a font with a system size of 30. Again, this is all UI elements that I built before, but we're going to need it if we want to move forward with the tutorial. Width 60, height of 60. All right, this looks good. We're going to give it a foreground color of purple. I just like the color purple, don't ask me why. An overlay of a rounded rectangle. I don't need the curly brackets. Rounded rectangle with a corner radius of 30. And on my rectangle, I'm going to have a stroke. Yeah, I'm going to have a stroke of the color purple. And the line width will be also 2, just as before. So yeah, okay, that will be the first element in our H stack, and then we just want a V stack in which we're gonna have this text right here. So again, in our V stack, we just want to have a text. The first text is just gonna be mark post. Want it to be bold. Foreground color of black. It's by default black because we on the light theme. If you were on the dark mode, the foreground color would be white by default, just so you know. The second text, we just want to give it a font of subheadline and a foreground color of gray. So yeah, and right now that will be basically an item in our view. We're gonna have a spacer right here, so it's a line on the left. We're gonna add some padding horizontally, and then we're just gonna give our whole Z stack a frame with a height of 100, so it just doesn't take up a whole screen too. All right, looks good. Looks pretty similar to what we had. Now I want to build the list view. I'll just call it the post list view. And here again, it's going to be pretty straightforward. We're just going to have a scroll view. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. And then what we want to have is a lazy V stack, in which we're going to iterate over our data. We're just going to iterate from 1 to 10. I think I need a third dot right here. And our content is basically going to be our post row. Let's look what it's like in the preview. I think it's expecting something of me. Can I convert? Tag close range, expected argument range 8. Okay, what am I doing wrong right here? I think I forgot to give it an ID. And my ID is just basically going to be self. Is it happy now? Yeah, seems to be. All right, so we got it. And I'm just gonna add this list view right here. How did I call it? Post list view. All right, so our profile looks pretty much as before, except we don't have this filter bar right here. Again, we can build it, but I just choose not to. All right, so that will be the first part of this tutorial. Just have this basic um, this basic H tag right here. I mean this basic profile, and then what we're trying to go to do after that is basically add the navigation. But maybe before that, what we're going to do is create the other screens that we want to have. So again, right on here, when I click on this followers button, I navigate to the followers screen. So we're just going to create this follower screen right here real quick. It's going to be pretty simple. So to my core, I want to add followers folder, which is basically going to have the followers view. And just as before, it's just going to be, or I guess I can just copy everything that I had right on here for my scroll view. And that's basically the only thing that we're going to have in this followers view at first. But the only difference in this case is it's going to take a variable, which is going to be the list of followers that we basically have. So I give it user. Again, to satisfy my preview with a list of followers. Just give it some mock data so it knows what to do. And we should have our list right here. Okay. So in this case, instead of iterating from 0 to 10, what we're going to do is basically iterate over this list of followers. And what we're going to have right here is not this post row, but we basically want to have a user row, which is going to be pretty similar to the post row. So let me create that component right now, user row. Again, just to save us some time, I'll just copy everything that I had right here for our user row. It's going to look like this. For the icon, I'm going to have a person. Okay, and this user row needs to have a user as parameter. So I'll just give it a user, just type user. At first, I'll satisfy my preview with a mark user, which is basically going to be the mark user. And here, instead of this mark post text, I want to have the user's display name. I think it was display name, yeah, at first, yeah. And on the second line, I want to have the user's username. Right, looks good. I forgot to give this VStack an alignment. It should be aligned on the left, leading. Looks good. All right, so basically your follower screen will do the same thing. Like I said before, we're gonna take a user and we're basically gonna provide our user row with that user. Let's see how it looks in the preview. Pretty good. All right. We're basically going to do this exact same thing for the following. So again, I want to have a following view that is going to display the list of all the users that I basically follow, or that LeBron James follows for the matter. It's going to take a list of users that is going to be called following. I'm going to have following right here too. And in my preview, I'll just give it all the users. All right, I think it should be good. Has to reload. Okay, it's not happy. Why is that? Argument spell, passive call that takes no argument for each following. Okay, I don't understand. What's the matter right here? Following is basically users, all users. I think a preview is just complaining about something and I'm not really understanding what is going on. Again, I did the exact same thing in the preview of my followers. It seems to be working. Let's come back right here one more time. Okay, now it's working. There was no error. Wow, okay, so we're good. Okay, the first step in implementing the navigation is basically put our whole profile view in what we call a navigation stack. If you're not familiar with a navigation stack, it's just basically a container for our navigation, pretty similar to a navigation controller if you're coming from UIKit. And our navigation stack needs a root that is going to be this right here. And then the thing that we can do is basically give our navigation stack a state variable to determine our path. It's going to be a navigation path. So this navigation stack as parameter can always take a binding and a binding for the path variable, and you can see right here it creates a navigation stack with heterogeneous navigation state that you can control. Yeah. Just a complicated explanation to tell us that we can give it a parameter, which is basically going to determine our path while we're navigating. So that's good. The next thing that we're going to do is basically define some destinations. So we want to be able to click again on this right here and navigate to the follower screen, for example. How we're going to achieve this is we're going to give our VStack right here a navigation destination modifier. And the thing that you need to know at first is that SwiftUI works, or the navigation in SwiftUI since the iOS 16 update is data driven. So before that, what we're going to do is define something first that I like to call my route. So, and I'll explain why I'm doing it. So this route right here would actually just be an enum. And what it needs to be, or to be conformed to the hashable protocol. And what that actually means is just that we can differentiate one case from another, basically. The first case in our route will be the followers case. And the second one is going to be the following case. Again, if I click on the button that has this property right here, or this case right here, then I want to go on the followers view. And for the other one, I want to go on the following view. All right, we're good. So how does this work? On my VStack right here, I'm going to define navigation destination. It needs to have a hashable protocol, so I'll just give it the route protocol in the self. And the navigation, what I want to do is just basically take that route and argument, and I want to have a switch. You can basically have an if else, but if you have a lot of cases, it's always better to have a switch. So again, on this switch, what I want to do is basically this. If the case that is presented basically is followers, what I want to do is open the followers view with a list of followers. Again, right here, I'm just going to use mock data. And the other case, which is going to be following, what I want to do is open the following view, which is basically going to be this, and I'll just give it mock data too. So we're going to build the app for the first time. just so you guys can see what it looks like. And I think what we forgot is to give a navigation right here. We should give it navigation title. Navigation title for screen. We're going to call this screen profile. And we want it to be, nope, we want it to be, how is it called? Navigation bar title display mode. We want it to be inline. You see right now it's just way too big. We just want to keep it up there. Right, good. We're gonna do the same thing real quick for the followers view as well. On the scroll view, I'm just going to give it a title followers, and the exact same thing for the following view, which is going to have the title of following. Very good. So let's build the app for the first time and actually see what it looks like and if everything's working. Oh, I think we forgot something. We obviously forgot something. We forgot to tell our content view, and where is it? I'm not seeing. Okay, right. We forgot to tell our content view that what we basically want to have right here is our profile view. Instead of the previous content view. So, okay, let's run the app again and see what it looks like. Okay, looks good. And right now, what you want to test is when we click on this, do we actually navigate? Right now I'm clicking, if you know, maybe you didn't notice, but I was clicking, and the part that we missed is we need to tell our profile view that this is basically going to have some navigation links. So how this navigation works, again, you have a stack that is a container, you define some navigation destinations that we did right here, but then again, you need to tell your compiler or your code what element is going to be the link for that destination. And it's going to be actually right here. We want this whole VStack to be what we call a navigation link. Navigation link, which is going to have the value and of route. And again, right now we're on the case, so we're going to go give it the case of followers. So what I'm basically saying right here is if and when I click on this component right here, I want to go to the follower screen. We'll do the exact same thing for following. I'm gonna put it in navigation link. I'm gonna give it a value of route dot following. Let's run the code again, and hopefully right now it should work. And it's blue. Yeah, that's pretty ugly. Let's just give it a foreground color of black real quick. I want it right here. I want it for the other text too. I want to do, or I could just, it's pretty dumb. I could just give the whole VStack a foreground color of black. And I'll do the exact same thing right here. All right. Good. So it seems to be working. Again, we're just passing some random data, but it seems to be working pretty fine. We can navigate and go back. Navigate, we see followers. When we click on followers, following, when we click on following. Good, and that's basically a big step in this tutorial. The next thing that I'm going to do is trying to, or at least try to have all this data in a dynamic way. You can see that we're just passing some mock data. So the next step is going to be to build the view model and then implement it from there. I think I'll just store the view model in my profile. I'll just create a Swift file that we'll call ViewModel, which is just basically going to be a class with the name ViewModel. And our view model needs to conform to the protocol observable object. And if you're not familiar with observable objects, it's just basically a way of telling our UI to listen to changes to the variable that we're going to declare in our view model, and you'll just understand it when we use it. So what I'm going to do in our view model is basically just have a current user, which is going to be the mark user. Still, I'm going to use mark data, but I just want it to be coming from the view model. This property wrapper right here, publish, is just a way of telling our UI that this is basically like a state variable. And you'll see how it works. So I basically want to have a current user. What I also want to have is, or we'll just keep it that way at first. Okay. So we're going to initialize this with current user. And let me just look right quick what I did before. Okay. And once we have our view model, what we want to do is basically initialize it right here. So we initialize it with a state object, which is basically the equivalent of the state, but just in this case, it's an object, and it's going to be a view model. So we're creating an instance of the view model, and we're just storing it in this variable view model right here. So right here, instead of having this mark user, we're going to pass it the current users. What is it going to be? The display name, I think. Okay, for the info view, we don't need any. Just give me a second. Can convert value of type string to expected argument user. Oh, we kind of passed the whole user then. No problem. That's fixed. So again, the next thing what I want to do is just have this follow count right here. Okay. And for that, I would basically like to have a function that goes and fetch the profile. And once it fetched the profile, it's going to set all the users that the current user is following and all the users that basically follow the current users. So what I want to do right here is basically create a function which is fetch profile. And we're just going to simulate an API call by just waiting 1 second before displaying the data. So we're going to use our main queue and async after, and I'll just tell it to load or to execute this code block after 1 second. And my execute is just basically going to be the code I want to be executed. And what I want to do is basically set this current user right here actually after I fetch the data. So I need to use self because I'm in a closure. Self current user is equal to user dot mark user. And here I'm going to initialize my user. So my user is basically in the beginning going to be an empty user. I hope you follow the logic. When I open this screen, when I open the app, what I want to do is basically load the users first and then set the followers and everything else. For that, what we're also going to need is to basically have like a loader. That loader is going to be displayed when this operation right here is basically current. And once it's done, we want to display the data that we fetched. This is just for, again, it will just help us simulate fetching data. And for the user, for the current user, it actually doesn't make a lot of sense because we're just starting the screen with it. For the other users, it will be a lot more helpful. So again, I'm just gonna have an enum right here for the UI state. And the cases that we're gonna have are if our data is loading or if our data is loaded. So again, I'm gonna accommodate my UI or my profile view with a little modification, and that's basically gonna be, I'm gonna put all of this in an if. So what I want to do is if my, oh, I forgot to create a variable in the view model. I need a variable right here for the profiles UI state, and I'm going to initialize it with loading. Again, it has to be of type UI state. Initialize it with loading. Again, I open my profile. I first see a loader, so I want to tell my screen, hey, if it is loading, just show a progress view. Progress view. If it isn't loading, then I can display my UI. And just so it's, what I'm going to do is wrap this whole thing right here. Just give me a second. I'm going to wrap this whole thing right here in the VStack. And I'm going to put all these modifiers on the bigger VStack. And in my view model, once I'm done fetching the profile, what I'm going to do is basically set my profile UI state to loaded. And let's just run the app, and I hope it will just make a lot more sense. Navigation title. What's the problem right here? Oh, okay. I should move it one bracket down on this VStack right here. Okay. So let's just run the app, and I hope it will make a lot more sense. Okay, it's loading, and it should normally set the profile after 1 second. Let's just see right here what we forgot to do. Oh, we forgot to call the function. And I want right here on this VStack to have a task. Again, this task modifier just helps us call functions that we can run asynchronously. What I want to do right here is call fetch profile once the screen appears. So once the screen appears, we call fetch profile, and then we set the profile. This looks pretty good. Okay, we're still passing mock data here, so we're gonna set the followers and everything else to in our fetch profile function. So what we want to do right here is to set the current users followers. How can we do this? What we're gonna do is basically just iterate over all the users and filter them. How are we going to filter them? We're just basically going to tell our filter function, hey, just give us back all the users that don't have an ID, that don't have the ID of LeBron James. And the ID of LeBron James is LeBronJames at gmail. No, not Gmail, nba.com. So let's just run it first, just for the followers, and it should actually just be 3. What are we doing wrong right here? Oh, we're not giving the right variables. So we want the current users, followers, and right now it should work. So we should just see 3 followers right here. We're just seeing 1. Just give me a second. Oh, all the users that are not LeBron James. Sorry for that. Now we should have just 3 followers. Okay, pretty good. And the next thing that we want to do is basically the exact same thing for our following. And it's going to be weird because all the followers all the users would follow each other. and only user that one cannot follow is basically himself. But again, this is just a dummy tutorial. Um, okay, so we're pretty good on the way. We can navigate, and the next step will actually be to give the right followers right here. So what we want to do right here is not in our followers view to display all the users, but we want to display that user's followers. And we want to do the exact same thing for the following screen. Okay, and now we should be good. And even on the navigation, we should only be seeing all the users that are not LeBron James. Okay, this looks pretty good. Yeah. Okay, so the next step right now would be to create the other profile, which is basically um, what we want to do in this tutorial. We want to be able to navigate on another user's profile and basically just load the data dynamically. Okay, so how can we achieve that? We will start by creating another profile. And you'll see in a second what it would look like. It would pretty much like the basic profile. I'll just call this view other profile view. And I'm basically gonna take up everything that I had right here, except for the navigation stack, obviously. And I'm gonna do this. I think I'm good right here. And we will see if we forgot the bracket. I don't think we have. Let's see. Okay. So this one right here needs to have the VM as an observed object. Again, this is just a way of telling our view that it can listen to the changes that the view model would make. So it needs to have an observed object of type view model. We're going to create a couple of variables in our view model and a couple of functions too. So these are all the functions that we're going to use for the profile. Right now, we want to have basically the same stuff, but for the other profile. So we want to have another user. We're going to initialize it with an empty user. And then we want to have a published var for the other profile UI state. Because of course, we need to load the screen, fetch the other user's profile, set the data, and then display the data. So it's going to be of type UI state. And we're going to initialize reloading. Okay. Now we want to have a function to fetch that other profile. How can we achieve this? Just basically write a function called Siri. So what we're going to do right now is have the function fetch other profile. And since it needs to be dynamic because we're going to fetch, we need to make it possible to be fetching, I don't know, 100 profiles or just 3 in our case. We're going to give it an ID. So our function is going to take a parameter, which is going to be the other user's ID, basically. Just basically the user that we clicked on. So how can we fetch or how can we set that user's profile? Basically just like we did right here. Or I'll just write it myself actually. So we're gonna use the main. Again, we use the main. It's always better to use the main when you're going to do some UI updates. And even though we're just simulating the call right here, what is going on right here? Yeah, okay, we're good. So even though we don't have any API or I don't know backend connected, I just like to keep it consistent that way. use the main every time I want to do some UI updates. So okay, all right. Right now, what we want to do is set the other user, and the other user is just basically going to be in all my users. I basically just want to have the user that basically has the ID that I have as a parameter. So I want the user whose ID is basically equal to the other user's ID. Okay, and this should basically set my user. And I need to, yeah, you can basically give it a default value. I think it's actually better to give it a default value. So what we're gonna do is give it a default value in case we don't find that user, and that default value will obviously be the empty user, just in case. Okay, so we're good. Now we're gonna do the exact same thing for that other user's followers. We need to set the followers, and what we're gonna do is iterate over all the users and just basically filter out all the users that don't have that user's ID. Again, not equal to other user ID. The exact same thing for following. Yep, the exact same for following. And once we've done that, we want to set the other user's profile state to load it, since we can basically display all the data that we have loaded. All right, so now let's go back to our other profile view. Okay, again, when the other profile is loading, just display a progress view. Once it's loaded, we want the header view with the other user, and a follow count view will have not the current user, but the other user. Okay, and on task, what do we want to do? We want to fetch the profile. All right, good. The only thing that the only caveat is we need to have that other profile ID. How can we achieve that? We're just gonna have a variable right here, which is going to be other user ID of type string. And with that variable, we're going to be able to call fetch other user. Right here, I need to add an instance of a ViewModel in my preview, and I'll just give it, I don't even need to actually, okay. Right here, what I want to have is basically display that user's username. How can I achieve that? I'll just say VM other user username. Right. So we should be good right now. Now let me check. Are we doing everything right? And we should be able to call fetch other profile with the other user's ID. Okay, so basically what we're trying to say is right here, what's going on right here? Okay, don't need that. On our followers view, and I'll just load the preview real quick before running the code. What you want to do right here is basically when I click on this, I want to be able to navigate to that user's profile. Again, just as before, we need to have a route for that. We need to have a route and we need to have a link. In this case, I would like to send an argument while navigating. I would like to send that user's ID. Again, if I click on Anthony Davis, I would like to send to the next screen the Anthony Davis's ID. If I click on Anthony Davis, I would like to send the ID of Anthony Davis to the other profile view, basically. So again, first step would be to add another route, which is going to be auto profile. What's good is I can basically have an argument right here on this auto profile. Okay, and in my profile view, I'll need to add that case, and my compiler is going to complain because I don't have all the cases right here. So what we're going to do right here is let auto profile with the variable auto user ID. And in that case, I want to be able to navigate to the other profile view with the VM being the VM. And yeah, I'm going to use it right now. The other profile's ID being the other profile ID. All right. The last step again will be to add a link. Why is it complaining? Switch must be exhaustive. Why am I right here? Oh, I don't need this switch right here, actually. That was an error of mine. All right, okay. So again, the last thing that we need to do is in our follower screen, we need to have a link on this user profile component. What we're basically going to do is put it in a navigation link. Navigation link. I already have it right here. And I can actually choose the version that has a value and a label. The value right here will be route auto profile. And the ID will be that user's ID. The label will just be what I had before. Okay, somehow it needs to have a foreground color. Okay, so I'll just go back to my users role real quick and give all my text component a foreground color of black. All right, we should be good. So let me just jump back in right here. And we're gonna do the exact same thing. And let me just delete all those white spaces real quick. We're gonna do the exact same thing in our follower screen. Instead of having this, I want that. So right now, what we just did is we allowed our navigation stack to know that, hey, this user role right here should be a link to the other user's profile. And when that profile appears, we're gonna fetch that profile, set the UI state once we floated that profile. Okay, so let's do it. Let's test it out and see what we've missed, if we've missed something. I'm sure we missed something. So right now I'm on Antonio Davis. Right, okay, it loads. And this is basically how you can navigate to another user's profile. But you can see we have a little bug right here where the user, the view is basically not reloading. It needs to be reloading every time that we're navigating to a new profile. So what we're gonna add, and that is basically the catch of the tutorial, we're gonna add a reset profile function to our view model. And what is that function gonna do? Reset other profile. That function is going to take another user ID as a string. Well, in the first part, I would like to demonstrate what this does when this function doesn't take an ID. And all this function does will be to reset, and we want to do it directly. Async execute. Again, just always use async on the main. Just always go back to the main when you want to do the UI update. We want to put it to loading. That's how we reset. So again, how are we going to call this function? Once we're navigating to another profile, just reset at first and then fetch, right? So, okay, let's see how it works. Right now, I'm LeBron James profile. We go to Antonio Davis's profile. Okay, pretty good. We see Antonio Davis. and then on Austin Reeves, it loads back. That's pretty good too. All right. Then on Dilo. The problem now is if I go back and then go back on D'Angelo's profile, well, I have already loaded it before. So it would be nice to, you know, not load it again because I've just saved this data like a couple of seconds ago. So what we can do is have like a second variable. That second variable is just going to be, and it actually doesn't need to be published. That second variable is going to be the old, or maybe call it the previous user ID. And we're going to initialize it with an empty string. Okay, so the logic that I want to implement is if you were on a profile and you go to that profile's followers, or you just navigate to one other screen, which is basically just following your followers, do not directly load or reload the profile. Maybe just look up if it's the same user that we're trying to navigate to again. So right here, what I'm going to do is have an if statement, and this is going to be conditional. So if the new user profile, I'm going to say old, how did we call it? Previous user profile is different, and this is why I need an argument. My argument will be other user ID. So if that user's profile is different than the new user's profile, then you can reload. Else, maybe not, because we already have the data and we don't need to reload it again. Right here, after I've set the user, I'm just going to tell him, hey, set the previous user ID to that user's ID right now. So self the user ID. So let's go through it one more time. Once I navigate on another profile, I want to set the user. But the extra step that I took is setting the previous user to the current user. Okay. What I'm going to do right now is every time I navigate to a new profile, I'm going to call reset other profile. But then again, it will only reset if it's a new profile. I hope it's pretty much clear. Again, I'm going to call this function right here with the current user's ID, current other user ID. So let's run it again and see if it made a difference. I'm going on Anthony Davis. If I go back and I go Anthony Davis, it doesn't need to load. But once I change the profile, then it can load again. If I change, it can load again. If I stay on Dilo, it doesn't load. Austin Reeves. All right, it's working pretty well. Okay, now the next thing to do is basically to enable that once I click on Anthony Davis right here, I just see Anthony Davis's followers, for example. Right here, when we're clicking on this, we're still displaying the current user's followers, and on here, the current user's following. So for the other profile, we're going to need to have two other separate screens that we're gonna call other followers for this one. Oops, just typo. Let me just refactor this real quick. It's not working for some reason. I'm just gonna delete it. So other followers, and right here other following. So again, those screens are going to be pretty similar to the ones that we built before. Other where am I? Followers, okay. Followers view. And and it's basically going to be everything that we had right up here. So we're just going to copy everything out of followers view. We will take a list of followers and we will navigate to the other profile. Okay, let's satisfy a preview real quick, even though we don't need it anymore. All users, okay, and we're gonna do the exact same thing right here. This is going to be other following view, right? And it's going to take following, right here needs to be following, and let's just give our preview some mock data. All users. All right. So on our profile view, we don't need to have this follow count right here, but we need to have an extra variable, and we're just gonna build it right here real quick, and it's going to be called other follow count view. And how is it gonna look? It's going to be the exact same thing as before. Where is my components folder? Okay, right here. Okay, follow count view, sorry. It's going to be, again, the exact same thing. Follow count view. And it's going to take a list of followers. Right, just give our preview some mock data. All users. And in here, instead of having follow count view, we're gonna have other follow count view. And here, instead of giving the other user, yeah, we're basically gonna give the other users followers and the other users following. Right, good. So right now, when I click on another user follower, no, I'm not done yet. And you can see why. So I'm navigating right now to Anthony Davis. And when I go on his followers, I still see Anthony Davis. Why? Because I'm still displaying the current user's followers. We need to add a route. We need two more routes actually. The first one is going to be other followers. And the second, other followers. And the second one is going to be other following. Okay, and right now I need to tell my navigation destination modifier that I have two more routes. And in the case of other followers, what I need is other followers view. With what data? With the other users followers. And for the other following, I need the other following view with the other users following. Good. And right now we should be good. Again, I think we have everything. No, we still need to change our links right here. And in our links for the auto follow count view, we need to have auto followers right here and auto following. And this should be our last step actually. And right now, I'm going to Austin Reeves, and I see Austin Reeves profile. And if I go in Austin Reeves followers, right now I see LeBron James and not Austin Reeves anymore. Because we still have a function in our view model that filters basically when fetching a user's profile and a user's followers, it just basically fetches all users that aren't that user. So everything's working pretty perfectly. All right. And we're loading our data pretty good. We still have this small bug right here where it just displays a user. Okay. The last thing that I would like to add is we're still able, up until now, to navigate to LeBron James' profile, and we can basically, I don't know, it just isn't right. How we can fix that bug is basically in our other followers view, we have this navigation link that allows us to navigate to someone else's profile. Here, we want to say, hey, if that user is actually LeBron James, then don't navigate to someone else's profile, but just go back, actually. Just go back to the initial screen, which is the profile, right? So what we're going to do is basically this. We're going to have an if statement right here, and we're going to say if user ID is LeBron, no, there's no .nba at nba.com. What we want to do is have a button with our label being not our navigation link anymore, but just being our user role. And right here, what we want to do is reset our path. How can we go back to the first screen or to the initial screen? We can just reset our path. And second step would be else, as in if we're another user, just have our normal navigation link as we did before. Okay, so the action right here is going to be to reset our path. How can we achieve this? We can basically just say, hey, path should be equal to navigation path again. For that, we will need to have the path somewhere around here. So I'll just tell my other profile view that it will need a binding on the path. It should be of type navigation path. I need to satisfy my preview right now real quick. We just need a constant with navigation path. All right, and how can we do this? Or where should I give it a path? In my profile, I have this navigation modifier, and I'll just give it an argument of path, which is going to be a binding of the path variable that I have actually right here. So right now, if I'm on the followers view and that the user that I click on is LeBron James, I'll just navigate back to the profile. So, okay, I go Tony Davis, following Austin Reeves, following D'Angelo Russell. And if I click on LeBron James right now, we should be navigating to LeBron James. What's not working right now? Oh, I think we forgot one case because we need to do the exact same thing for the following screen, even though we were actually on the follower screen. But let's just do it like this first. I'll go to auto following view, and I'll just copy the code because it's the exact same code actually. All right, so let's just test it out real quick and see how it goes. I'm just wondering if I forgot a step. We're gonna find out real quick. Extra argument path. I just added that, I think. Didn't I? Oh no, not yet. So I need a binding on my path, which is going to be a tight navigation path. And I need to tell my preview that I need a path, which is going to be a constant of my path. Okay, so now let's see. LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Anthony Davis's followers, LeBron James. Doesn't seem to work. Why? Oh, I haven't done anything with it yet. I haven't I haven't given my button an action. Oh wow. I'm really sorry for that. I just need to reset my path. This is pretty dumb. Okay, and I need to do the exact same thing on the other profile. Okay, and now we should be good. Let's just run it. Um, Anthony Davis, from Anthony Davis to Austin Reeves. If I go on Austin Reeves followers and I click on LeBron James, I just go back. All right, and that will be it. Again, I'm pretty sure I forgot a lot of stuff because I don't know. I was just going up and down in every direction. But if you have some more questions on the tutorial or maybe anything that's Swift related, you can just leave a comment and I should have a notification. If you like the video, you can just subscribe. I don't know, give it a like, leave a comment, send me an email, whatever. Or go check out my GitHub because I have some more projects that I've done in the past. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching, and I guess until next time.